All right, LaFond is back. So, before we start, something happened to your fingernails. What are you goth now? Are you going? Did you switch sides on me?
I was with one of our training partners and his 4-year-old daughter. Wanted to practice her manicuring and her makeup skills. I let her put makeup on my head.
Oh yeah.
I wouldn't let her near the eyes or anything. I said, this hand is the one that could still hurt people. It's the devil hand, so it's got to be black.
That's right.
But I can't crack an egg with this hand, so she got to get creative with these fingernails.
Oh.
And she actually marked me for a runaway.
Oh Jesus.
Okay, with the black nail polish on my head.
She should have made a hat. She should have made like a smiley face on your head.
Right. So she was pleased with her work. The make-off came off the head, by the way.
Yeah.
And she complained that my beard was not long enough, that Santa Claus doesn't trim his beard, and I should no longer trim my beard. So.
All right. Well, that's. Of course, our favorite time here. It's getting some drinks over here. The rum, we got the beer. But it's October Eve. Right? It's September 30th. This month there's gonna be a lot of videos, and we figure we talk about subject near and dear to my heart, horror, right? Stories, narratives. Regardless, sometimes horror, and it's understandable. Sometimes horror and certain kinds of horror, particularly more on the bleak end. It can have on some people, on some people, it can have a negative effect. It can be depressing a little bit. Like sometimes, like Lovecraft has a very bleak worldview. Someone like Ligotti, it's even that on steroids. I would argue even Edgar Allan Poe. I don't think anybody in the last couple of years, the last century or more, can match the bleakness of his work all the way from the 1830s and 40s. But we'll make this a little discussion of horror, some of my opinions, but we'll segue into like horror that you feel is not, I wouldn't say uplifting, but horror that is not, won't bring you down, won't out bleak you. Sometimes that's a part of its charm, and some of your favorite horror stories of any medium. What do you guys say?
Well, they're all written by Robert E. Howard. He actually borrowed H.P. Lovecraft's mythos, his cosmic horror, with permission. They communicated through letters, and he wrote almost exclusively heroic characters. So my favorite short horror story that he wrote was The Tower of the Elephant. Let's say that one ends up being genuinely uplifting. Most of the cast dies. A mixture of racial and cosmic and sexual horror is a story that was refused by Farnsworth Wright. It's titled The Veil of Lost Women.
I've never heard of that one.
Okay, in which Conan the Barbarian, who is an acting war chief of an African tribe, commits a genocide just so he can have sex with a white woman. And it's written from the point of view of the white woman, who is the object of his not too tender affections.
Oh my God.
Okay, and there's sexual mutilation, and it's a horror show. Okay, the editor just sent that right back. I was like, yeah, no, not here. The story where he most closely follows H.P. Lovecraft and his horror, there in The Veil of Lost Women, there is an H.P. Lovecraft horror that comes at the end. So it's a really horrific situation. It gets even more horrific. There's 3 layers of horror: sexual, racial, then sexual, then cosmic in the story.
Those are the best.
And only 3 chapters. The Zuthal of the Dusk uh, actually is about Conan deciding it's about time to butcher his slave girl rather than have her die of thirst. Uh, when she notices the glimmering of some minarets on the city. So they go there and they find out that it's like modern America. There's this creep state god that lives in the depths of the social order that comes out at night and wreaks havoc upon a drug addicted population. Okay.
Sounds great.
And there's a great like bad girl in there. There's like some girl on girl violence, and
Nice.
there's Conan ends up fighting one of the gods from Lovecraft's mythos, like the giant frog god.
Oh yeah. I think what's his name invented that one. Clark Ashton Smith.
Yeah,
Well,
and these guys shared they had a shared mythos. So I would say the best one is actually kind of the longest, and also did not get published. It was titled The Black Stranger, and it was actually rewritten. It was written as a Conan story and then rewritten as a Black Volmea story, and he couldn't sell either one of them. They were maybe the last two things he wrote before he whacked himself. And it's about a Spanish nobleman escapes to a distant shore with his household, sets up a little fortress because he's afraid of some sorcerer that's coming for his soul. The sorcerer is the Black Stranger. And the heroic character gets inserted in this, and the story is primarily told from the point of view of the niece of the Duke that is in hiding from the Black Stranger, and what she sees, the behavior of the different men. And then there's also the racial horror aspect of this, where the Pictish savages are plotting to destroy the settlement, in part because the Black Stranger, the sorcerer, is making the savages think that the civilized refugees are killing their people. And the Conan or Black Volmea character, they're pretty much the same. A big Gaelic, barbarian stumbles upon this when he's being hunted by these savages.
Now, one would say, okay, these are all Conan stories. Now,
Yes.
you were the first guy to mention to me, before I ever really read them, that they are sort of like horror stories. And obviously, if you look at the film, there's a lot of horror. It's not for little kids, not just the violence part, but there is some really horrific imagery, even in the film, right? The witch and the Dulce Doom
Well,
and the snake and everything.
you reminded me of the best one then. So the witch comes from the Bran McMorn story, which is another hero. And
Worms of the Earth.
the worms of the earth.
Yeah, it's a good
and
story.
The witch is an enabling character, a sorceress, and it's even creepier in the story because she's half reptilian,
Oh,
and all she wants is the kisses of a king,
yeah. Yeah.
even if he's the king of a dying race.
The dying race. Yeah.
And it's multi-layered horror. There's 3 different layers of horror in The Worms of the Earth. That's possibly the best thing that Howard ever wrote,
Yeah.
and maybe one of the best horror stories ever written, when you consider that the hero is not truly able to defeat the horror like the Conan character reliably does. He's the apex hero.
Right.
For a character that is always in horrific settings, that might be more to most people's liking, I would suggest the other Howard hero, Solomon Kane.
Yeah, Solomon Kane's
They're all horror
stories are great.
stories.
Yeah.
And he's a less overpowering and more psychological
Yes.
hero than the Conan character.
I'll give a little, since we're in the Robert E. Howard section, Black Hound of Death and Black Canaan.
Black Canaan is.
Yeah,
We cannot discuss
no,
the
no.
geographic area where it takes place.
No, we can't. There's a few things we can't discuss. Well, I will actually
Blankhead Creek.
I'm gonna go over some of those stories later in the month, the greatest month of October. So, and now you know October is named after what? Is that OCT? Is that 8 originally? What is October, like the root word for it?
I don't know what the root word for October is. Okay, December is the 10th month. So October and November are two intercalcated months that were inserted into the Roman year at the calendric reforms of Numa around 750 BC, at the same time that all other ancient calendar systems were being corrected to reflect a longer year.
Okay, interesting.
Okay, so there was some cosmic stuff that happened then, and so you go from September, the 9th month, then you have October and November, and then you have December, the 10th month. And I don't know what October and November mean.
Yeah,
okay,
well,
but March is for Mars, June is for Juno.
Juno. Hey. All right, well that's interesting. I'll just say in terms of horror, like say cosmic horror, bleak horror, Legati horror. Maybe because I'm getting older and my cynicism is becoming more. It doesn't hurt me as much. I don't know how else to say it. You know, maybe because I'm looking at the other end of life. Let's say. I don't know if it's my misanthropic contempt for humanity. I could really care less what happens to humanity in a big way, on many different levels. Other than civic customs. I mean, you do the right thing, be moral, all that, for its own sake, if anything else. But in terms of the context of it, I always think horror is like a sublimation of all your fears and all the horrific possibilities there that you sort of experience without actually having to go through it. And even some of the things that may mimic stuff you've actually been through, when you see it simulated, I don't know, for me it doesn't turn me off to it or maybe not want to see it. I don't know, maybe I'm going too much into it. But essentially, I guess as you get older, you just don't give a fuck as much. And that maybe helps in terms of
If I could plug one of my horror stories,
yes.
Particularly with the Bacchanalian thematics here, I think Planet Buzzkill is probably the most uplifting horror story that I've read.
My favorite scene in that, and I've done a video of that. My favorite scene of that is if the world was ending and there were like millions of little robot, blood-sucking, mutating little spider things that could turn people into like creatures, right? Where would you go? What you would hit the liquor store? You would just start grabbing all the liquor you could. That would be currency later, but if not, you're gonna get effed up at the end of the world. Like I said, is that nihilistic? Nah, man, it was realistic. So, and this guy wrote that scene. All right, so October Eve, we're starting the best month of the year when it's not totally freezing, when the leaves change, and like I said, LaFond's gonna be here for the rest of the year, so we got a lot of videos to make. All right, later.